Hi Capricorn, and welcome to your eclipse forecast. This is designed to cover the June and July eclipses and will last from June until November. So it's the 6 months eclipse cycle that starts at the solar eclipse in Cancer on the 21st of June and then continues until we reach the last set of eclipses for 2020 that will happen in November and December. So just to say that I will be reading the charts as if Capricorn was rising. So if Capricorn is not your ascendant, I do recommend that you go and watch the forecast for your rising sign, because then a lot of what I say in terms of life area predictions will make a lot more sense. Also to say that I have designed these forecasts so that we look both at the solar and lunar eclipses charts in depth, so that's why they're a little bit longer than usual, but hopefully you'll be able to use these and kind of refer back to them when we get to the July eclipse, as well as during the months that follow, and you'll find this information useful. So before we start, I just wanted to draw your attention to the fact that I have done an astrological overview for the solstice eclipses that I have linked to my astrological written forecast for the June eclipse, and will be on the members page as well. And then in addition to that, I've also done, as I said, the geoscopes on my YouTube channel. So plenty of information for you, but that should help you to navigate the next 6 month cycle, and I hope you enjoy it. So starting with your chart for the solar eclipse in Cancer, it's fair to say that the emphasis for you for the next 6 months, Capricorn, is likely to be about relationships, personal power dynamics, and communication within those relationships. The reason that I say this is because we've got this eclipse happening for you in your 7th house. So this is the house of partnerships. It could be a financial partnership with one other person, a business partnership, as well as a romantic long-term commitment. So, you know, either a marriage partner or somebody that you are in a long-term relationship with. But we've got a couple of dynamics happening that are, you know, likely to kind of impact or add a layer to this new cycle that's starting. So the first thing to say is that we've got Mercury retrograde in the 7th house with the Sun and the Moon. Mercury is making a conjunction to Sirius, the fixed star, and I have covered this in my astrological overview forecast for the solar eclipse in Cancer, so you might want to go and listen to the second half of that, where I get into the fixed star aspects in more detail. But needless to say, what I feel that this could represent is somebody coming back from your past, perhaps somebody that you have separated from, that you may have had a long-term relationship with, but things kind of broke down, you possibly separated, went your separate ways, and now they're kind of coming back to you with you know, great intention and clarity, possibly with a proposal, because we have got Sirius here that's very brilliant. It reminds me of a diamond, you know, diamond ring. So it could be that you are getting a marriage proposal sort of between now and November. But the other thing to say about this is that we've got a couple of other things sort of going on. So first of all, when it comes to love and romance, we also need to look at Venus, because Venus rules your 5th house, and Venus has been retrograde herself for the last couple of months, since about May, and she's been making some difficult aspects to Neptune. So I have done a couple of videos on Venus retrograde and the Venus-Neptune square, so you might want to go and check those out if you haven't already on my YouTube channel, because they may help to clarify how you know, the relationships have the kind of difficulties that have been cropping up as a result of Venus retrograde these last few months. But needless to say, I think, you know, Venus is coming to the end of her retrograde period now. She's going to go direct on the 25th of June. So I kind of feel as though things are about to turn in your favor, and that you possibly are coming to a crossroads where you're going to have to make a decision, some kind of fork in the road, where things have the potential to improve for the better. This, of course, may not necessarily be a romantic relationship. It could be a work colleague. It could be somebody who actually works for you, and that's because Venus is going through the 6th house of your chart. So this is the house of work colleagues, of your work environment, as well as your everyday kind of rituals, your schedule, what you do kind of day to day. So it could be a personal assistant, a housekeeper, it could be somebody that works for you in a sort of domestic capacity, or a personal, PA. But it's possible that as a result of lockdown that you haven't seen this person for a long time, or you've had to sort of furlough them or something of that ilk. But I kind of feel as though that relationship, has the potential to be revived now, and that you're going to be made aware of, there's going to be real clarity about what a brilliant asset they are to your life. Something that I think is being highlighted by Venus and her trine to Saturn, which of course is your planetary ruler, and Saturn for you is sitting in your second house, so this is the house of income. It's also the house of values, the house of self-worth, of talent, skills and abilities, and of kind of material security. So maybe this person managed your finances for you, maybe they were a real kind of asset and you're sort of realizing how much you value them. They may also of course have it directly impacted on your financial or your domestic situation. So if, for example, you split up and you had to move out, or they had to move out, or there was a sort of reduction in terms of not having a dual income, then naturally this would have had a massive impact on both of your lifestyles. So as I say, I feel though that that with this emphasis on the 7th house, and with planets kind of either retrograde or going direct, that there's definitely movement here, and there's a sense of looking back and either people coming back or somehow getting insight and clarity about how things were in the past, and then being empowered enough to make some changes going forward. And here I think Pluto and Jupiter have a role to play. Now, the nub of your possible disagreement is likely to be found in the form of Mars, and that's because Mars is making a T-square to the nodes, which connect in turn to the Sun and the Moon in that 7th house. And of course, Mars has been in this T-square for some weeks now. In fact, at the last lunar eclipse in Sagittarius, we had a similar T-square with Mars and the luminaries kind of happening as sort of immutable T-square. So there's been quite a lot of kind of agitation, frustration, possibly conflict, disagreements of that sort of nature over these last few weeks, differing viewpoints, differing beliefs, and I think this is probably revolved around communication and perception of maybe how a situation kind of ended up, or something of that ilk. And that's because Mars has been going through your 3rd house, which is the house of communication. It's the house of your immediate environment, of commuting and transport, of neighbors and siblings and close relatives. So on some level, I think that there has been maybe confusion, miscommunication, not helped by Mercury retrograde. But now that we're moving into this more direct energy and Mars is about to change signs, I think that we're going to have progress in this area. And I think helping this particular situation to resolve itself will be a sextile between Mars and Pluto and Jupiter. Now, Jupiter and Pluto will be making a conjunction in your sign of Capricorn on the 30th of June. And so this is quite a big deal. This is almost a chance for a major reset. We saw this particular conjunction before at the 444 gateway back in April. So there may well be ties between then and now. But certainly this combination is really potent for making big or major changes, and it could be changes to your beliefs. It could also have something to do with your kind of your attitude or your subconscious reactions to situations, because it could be that you were triggered in some way by what happened before, when we had that T-square at the lunar eclipse in Sagittarius. You may have been triggered in some way, and so your response may not have necessarily been well thought through or very logical. It might have been very emotional, because Mars is going through Pisces, and Pisces is very, it's a water sign, so it's emotional, doesn't have good boundaries, it finds it difficult to discern one thing from another, so it tends to kind of lump everything together. And so it can sometimes be difficult to see things clearly. But now I feel that with the sextile happening between Mars and Pluto and Jupiter, there's a real opportunity here to kind of make things right, to get clarity, to communicate clearly, and to resolve any kind of differences or conflict. So that's really positive. It may also have something to do with family, because Mars does rule your 4th house of family. So it may have something to do either with a domestic issue, a property, or a family member who may have kind of got involved, or it may be a family member that you kind of had this dispute with. So that's something to bear in mind. But as I say, Mars will be changing signs. It will be moving into Aries, I think around about the 28th of June. So I think from that point onwards, things should progress quite nicely. There should be fewer hiccups. There will be less that's kind of confusing, or you'll be clear about what people's motives are, what they want, where they're coming from, and vice versa. So I think that will make things easier to resolve. And then Saturn, your ruler, will be kind of returning to the 0 degrees of Aquarius. Now this is because Saturn is currently retrograde. It's retrograding through your 7th and your 1st houses. So Saturn at this point is reaching a similar degree to the position that it was at back in March when we had the equinox, when we started Aries season, and Saturn ingressed into Aquarius for the first time. And of course since then Saturn has turned backwards, and it's now moving back through those degrees. So I think this is saying that you have an opportunity here to revisit issues from around about that time, perhaps make some tweaks, some refinements. These may have to do with self-worth, or how you value yourself. Could have to do with skills, talents, and abilities. It could have to do with earning power, with money and income and possessions. You'll probably have a better idea of what this is about, but certainly I think that it's a significant point. It will move back into your sign of Capricorn shortly. Certainly by the time we get to the lunar eclipse in your sign, Saturn will have changed signs, so that movement may also be significant. So let's take a look at that next. So now we move on to the lunar eclipse in Capricorn. This takes place on the 5th of July 2020, and it will be in your sign Capricorn, so quite significant. It's also worth saying that this is the last eclipse in the Cancer Capricorn axis for some time, at least 18 to 19 years. So if the last few years have been quite difficult, given the placements of these particular eclipses, then just know that this energy is coming to a close, so you can breathe a huge sigh of relief. But let's get into what this is likely to mean. So I think there's two kind of layers of gradation here that we need to kind of unpick. So the first thing to say is that in many ways this eclipse will complement the Cancer eclipse that we have in June, because it happens in the opposite signs, and in this case we've got the Sun in Cancer and we've got the Moon in Capricorn. So in a way it's kind of balancing out the energy of that Cancer solar eclipse. It's kind of telling you what needs to come in and provide a certain degree of like a counterpoint almost, in order to make sure that the energy remains balanced and doesn't get too one-sided. So that's one thing to say. And I think what this is talking about is self versus other. So it's kind of telling you that when it comes to relationships, you do need to consider your own emotional needs, your own physical needs, as well as your own health needs. You don't want relationships that are just all one way, and you don't want relationships that are draining of your physical or your emotional energy. So I think that this is what this eclipse is about. Then the other thing that we need to consider is that this eclipse may well be closing out energy that began for you around about January of 2019, and that's because we had a solar eclipse in Capricorn at very similar degree, so at around about 13 or 14 degrees of Capricorn. So a lot of overlaps, and with that in mind, I suggest that you go back and read my written forecast for that eclipse, which I think was called the Song of Orpheus. And the reason for that is because the Moon is going to be making a conjunction to the fixed star Vega, which is part of the constellation of Lyra, and this is the lyre of Orpheus. So that's why I'm talking about the Song of Orpheus. So I think that, you know, on some level, this particular eclipse could bring up issues around manipulation, enchantment, of kind of sort of issues around sexual kind of allure, as well as sexual courting between you and one other person. So as I say, I think definitely check out that forecast, because it might prove illuminating. The other thing to say, of course, is that Vega is one of the stars of Lyra, and of course this activates starseed kind of karmic issues and ties. So with that in mind, I suggest that you watch my astrological overview forecast, particularly the second half, where I get into starseed activations and alignments. But definitely, you know, there's a strong correlation here with physicality, with libido, with kundalini, and with sort of sexual dynamics between you and one other person. And then the other thing to say about this is that the Sun will be making a conjunction to Sirius and to Canopus. So in other words, the Sun has reached the point that Mercury was at when we had the solar eclipse in Cancer. And this may be significant. It could be that whatever memories or communication came in at the solar eclipse now almost becomes embodied in the form of a person. And this is more than likely going to be a male, because the Sun usually represents male energy. So it could signal somebody entering your life, either for the first time or returning. Somebody quite brilliant, somebody who's got a really sparkling, charismatic personality, who really stands out, you know, who's very different to anybody else that you kind of know. And I think that this is going to be a very significant connection if it's you know, somebody that you haven't met before. But more than likely, though, given this is a lunar eclipse, you know, you do already know this person. And, you know, I think that's because Mercury is retrograde here. So it could be somebody coming back, somebody that you've never been able to forget, or who hasn't been able to forget you. And, you know, this could be a kind of reunion type of scenario here. But, you know, with even, well, there's several things to say about this kind of energy. So the first is, of course, that Mercury will be making a square to Mars and to Chiron in your 4th house. So somehow this may create tension with either family members, with perhaps children or parents. Maybe they don't really approve of this person, or they're a little bit jealous, or vice versa. But there is the potential there for some conflict within the home. However, because Mars is moving to a conjunction with Chiron, there is potential here to heal the situation, to transmute this energy, and to sort of overcome any potential blocks or barriers. And then the other thing to say is that we've got the stellium of planets in Capricorn. So this is your sign. It's happening in your 1st house, which governs personal appearance, health, your physical appearance, the way that you express yourself, your kind of outlook on life, and the way that you project yourself to others. So on some level, it looks to me as though you are, you know, either sort of refining, mastering, or kind of removing something. So that this could be like a surgical sort of procedure, either on teeth, bones, skin, or hair. It could be that you are undergoing healing of some kind, because we've got Jupiter and Pluto here, Pluto being the real kind of energy of transmutation, metamorphosis, and also of energetic healing. You know, this is the phoenix kind of rising from the flames. And then on top of that, we've also got Saturn, so your ruling planet, which is now retrograded back into Capricorn. So this is a real kind of conglomeration of fixed stars, planets, and so on, that are really emphasizing your energy. So I do feel as though you're going to feel very powerful at this particular eclipse and in the 2 weeks that follow. It's like you're coming into your power. You're realizing your sort of how attractive you are, your sexual allure. You're also sort of realizing that you have more power perhaps than you thought you did. And this may pertain not just to the way that you kind of assert yourself, but it may also have something to do with how you come across in social situations or your kind of social standing, because Pluto does rule your 11th house of friendships, social media, and kind of group situations. So I really feel as though you're kind of coming into some very commanding energy. It's almost a kind of a mastery where you're sort of realizing that you have overcome these enormous karmic tests and you've really sort of graduated, you've leveled up, and this is of course demanding that other people do the same, but it does look to me as though they have. Certainly the energy of the Sun and Mercury and that brilliant Sirius does look very, very positive. It looks as though the other party knows clearly what they want, where they're going, that they're very sort of go-getting and dynamic, and that they've really kind of got their mojo back. And it looks to me as though you are going to too. And I think that's going to be helped by this Jupiter-Pluto conjunction that's happening on the 3rd, and that will still be very active by the time we get to this lunar eclipse. So that's really, really positive. The other thing to say, of course, is that Venus is now direct. So any issues that you may have had with an employee, a co-worker, somebody who you is kind of lives with you, shares your domestic space, or manages your household for you, I think that things certainly will be on the up there. I think you'll be able to make some clear decisions to get clarity on where that relationship is going. More than likely it has something to do with children, or kind of leisure activities, or something of that ilk, creativity, but it could also have something to do with your career path. It's possible that you have a PA, because this allows you to kind of work on building your business and growing it while this person kind of manages the day-to-day. And perhaps with lockdown and quarantine, they haven't been able to sort of come to your place of work, or actually physically be in the same room as you. And now this has the potential to change as Venus goes direct, and things start to gradually go back to normal. And I think this situation will also be helped by a sextile to Mars and Chiron. So somehow, as I say, I think that that this person will have a positive effect on your home environment or on family dynamics. So maybe they act as a kind of mediator. They know how to sort of handle people, and somehow they manage to smooth ruffled feathers, which just helps everything to sort of tick along much nicer when it comes to sort of everyday domesticity and your schedule. But definitely things seem to be improving on that score. And of course Mars will be direct too in Aries. So again, as I say, I think that things should be progressing enormously, when it comes to if you've got a house sale that you're waiting for news on, or if you are wanting to move or relocate. This Mars energy, I think, is more kind of go than when Mars was in very confusing and scattered sort of Piscean energy. So, all in all, I think quite positive developments likely to happen, between you and significant others. So overall, this energy lasts about 2 weeks, and as I say, I think it is closing out cycles from 2019. The solar eclipse will last for about 6 months. So do revisit this forecast as and when things kind of start to pop up and go. You have these little aha moments, and hopefully it will prove helpful over the course of the next 6 months. So that's it from me. I hope this forecast has been useful and enlightening. If you enjoyed it, do hit the like button if you're watching this on YouTube, and don't forget about the other links that I've got in the membership area around the eclipses, which include the video geoscopes for each of the signs, as well as the cosmic overview, which goes more in depth into the astrology of this particular 6-month event. But in the meantime, I'm wishing you all the best, happy solstice blessings, and I'll catch you again for my forecast for the lunar eclipse in Capricorn.